44, part 4. This is the beginning of paragraph 12. Had the convention taken the first method of adopting the second article of Confederation, it is evident that the new Congress would be continually exposed, as their predecessors have been, to the alternative of construing the term expressly with so much rigor as to disarm the government of all real authority, whatever, or with so much latitude as to destroy altogether the force of the restriction. It would be easy to show, if it were necessary, that no important power delegated by the Articles of Confederation has been or can be executed by Congress without recurring more or less to the doctrine of construction or implication. As the powers delegated under the new system are more extensive, the government which is to administer it would find itself still more distressed with the alternative of betraying the public interest by doing nothing, or of violating the Constitution by exercising powers indispensably necessary and proper, but at the same time not expressly granted. So from the last paragraph, he said there are 4 things that they could have done about this, there are 4 things that they could have done to, 4 methods to deal with this necessary and proper clause. And here he says, look, if we did what the Articles of Confederation says, and we expressly put every right in the Constitution, number 1, there probably will be so many laws written that it will confuse everybody. Or there will be so few rights given to the government that in times of emergency, they'll just be helpless to do anything for the country. So he says it's crazy if we want to tie up the hands of the government in doing its job. Then in the next paragraph, had the convention attempted a positive enumeration of the powers necessary and proper for carrying their other powers into effect, the attempt would have involved a complete digest of laws on every subject to which the Constitution relates. When he says the digest of laws on every subject to which the Constitution relates, as I just mentioned, he says if you want to express everything, all the rights expressly given, put it in detail, you just need tons and tons of pages to write these laws in. And that's not the right way to tie up the hand of the government, because circumstances arise where government has got to take certain measures, and maybe even you've written all these hundreds of laws, but none of them would apply. Then what? So it's foolish to expect to do it, to think that you can put every law in the book and cover every case that might happen. So let me do this again. Had the convention attempted a positive enumeration of the powers necessary and proper for carrying their other powers into effect, the attempt would have involved a complete digest of laws on every subject to which the Constitution relates, accommodated to not only to the existing state of things, but to all the possible changes with which futurity may produce. For in every new application of a general power, the particular powers, which are the means of attaining the object of the general power, must always necessarily vary with that object, and be often properly varied whilst the object remains the same. The next paragraph, had they attempted to enumerate the particular powers or means not necessary or proper for carrying the general powers into execution, the task would have been no less chimerical and would have been liable to this further objection, that every defect in the enumeration would have been equivalent to a positive grant of authority. If, to avoid this consequence, they had attempted a partial enumeration of the exceptions and described the residue by the general terms not necessary or proper, it must have happened that the enumeration would comprehend a few of the accepted powers only, that these would be such as would be least likely to be assumed or tolerated, because the enumeration would of course select such a would be least necessary or proper, and that the unnecessary and improper powers included in the residuum would be less forcibly accepted than if no partial enumeration had been made. So see, he keeps on going. He says, any way that you were going to tackle this, that you were going to work on this, it would have been crazy, because you can't write all these laws and find out that none of them apply, or write so few laws that maybe the government will violate the Constitution. So we've left it necessary and proper. This way the government will have enough leeway, enough flexibility to do what it needs, but at the same time, he takes it for granted that you as citizens, you will be alert, you would be watchful, and if the government doesn't do what it's supposed to, you take those representatives and senators, even the president, out. You kick them out and elect new people. Well, the next paragraph says, had the Constitution been silent on this head, there can be no doubt that all the particular powers requisite as means of executing the general powers would have resulted to the government by unavoidable implication. No axiom is more clearly established in law or in reason than that wherever the end is required, the means are authorized. Remember, I had that in part 1, that wherever the end is required, the means are authorized. You give responsibility to the government, make sure you give it enough authority to do its job. Wherever a general power to do a thing is given, every particular power necessary for doing it is included. Had this last method therefore been pursued by the convention, every objection now urged against their plan would remain in all its plausibility, and the real inconveniency would be incurred of not removing a pretext which may be seized on critical occasions for drawing into question the essential powers of the Union. And I'll continue the next paragraph. If it be asked, what is to be the consequence in case the Congress shall misconstrue this part of the Constitution and exercise powers not warranted by its true meaning, I answer the same as if they should misconstrue or enlarge any other power vested in them, as if the general power had been reduced to particulars and any one of these were to be violated. The same, in short, as if the state legislatures should violate their respective constitutional authorities. In the first instance, the success of usurpation will depend on the executive and judiciary departments, which are to expound and give effect to the legislative acts. And in the last resort, a remedy must be obtained from the people, who can, by election of more faithful representatives, and all the acts of the usurpers. Remember I said, if you find your representatives are not doing what they're supposed to, if they're violating their trust, take them out, vote them out of office. The truth is that this ultimate redress may be more confided in against unconstitutional acts of the federal than of the state legislatures, for this plain reason that as every such act of the former will be an invasion of the rights of the latter, there will be ever ready to remark the innovation, to sound the alarm to the people, and to exert their local influence in effecting a change of federal representatives. In other words, if the federal government starts violating the Constitution, does something wrong, it's the state legislatures and your representatives from state that will catch on and will be the first line of defense. And you can just change any bad representatives that you have in Congress, vote them out of office. So you've got the backing of your state legislatures. Federal government is not going to overstep its bounds. There being no such intermediate body between the state legislatures and the people interested in watching the conduct of the former, violations of the state constitutions are more likely to remain unnoticed and unrepressed. So he says, have no fear of the federal government violating the Constitution and getting away with it. You actually should be more scared of your state government violating your state constitution and getting away with it, because you are not watchful. You think you trust them. They're closer to you. But don't be mistaken, because if they notice that you are not watching them, they will violate the law and try to get away with it.